Anybody else? No? Bro?
I do. I like that Dak was there. Some might say, well, he had to be there. He was there for McCarthy or whatever. But I like this. I'm sure that made Brian Schottenheimer feel great. And if I'm Dak, I bet Dak is overjoyed. Dak is thinking, I know his system. I know this guy. I've worked closely with him. I don't have to change anything. I had the best season of my career under him. That's the only time 2 years ago when Dak finished second in the MVP race that he was even in the discussion for MVP. So he's excited, and I get it. He's with a guy he's comfortable with. Here's the thing. In all my years covering the NBA, there were times when I covered a team and the assistant coach became the interim coach, and then everybody loved him and he became the head coach, and all the players were excited because they were comfortable with him because they remember when he was just the assistant coach and they loved him, and it didn't work. I mean, sometimes you can be too comfortable with a guy. So I wonder, not only Dak, but Mike, and I get it, he was on the offensive side of the ball, but are these guys, these stars, they got some stars, despite the 7-win season, are they going to treat him like a head coach and respect him like a head coach? I'm not saying they definitely won't. I'm just saying sometimes the guy you want, because you love him, you're comfortable with him, he's not going to chew you out and all that stuff, might not be the guy you need.
Yeah, the comfort part is a little challenging because anytime you have familiarity, you come with a level of comfort, and there creeps in, and there's an opportunity for entitlement to creep in. Like, you be set in your ways of, this is what I do. What do you mean we're going to change things? That's my issue with this for the Cowboys. I know you're Mr. Continuity.
Yeah, I thought I was.
You don't like a drastic change. And I'm not saying that the Cowboys needed a drastic change, but they needed a change. And we're about to see the same thing. Dak is going, I don't think any one of us doubts Dak is going to have success. They're gonna be great offensively, they're gonna be productive, but what matters, is it just statistically, he's gonna be tied to me, I'm gonna have success, or are we trying to win championships? Because you talk about him all the time, and I just don't know if just the continuity shift is enough. Continuity comes with, you got to develop continuity with anyone you bring in.
So here's the question I would have for you before I even give my opinion, because this is what I've struggled with this. If this was the plan, then why would you not just keep Mike? Like, that's the piece of this that because while even the pro-continuity folks, what's real continuity is bring back, Mike McCarthy. Now, and I'm not trying to play both sides here because I did not think they should bring back Mike McCarthy. But I also did not think it was on the board. They were just going to elevate a guy Mike McCarthy hired on the offensive side of the ball to keep everything going. So that's the part of this that, to me, I don't understand. I don't understand why you would decide to have the seismic shift of, we are changing head coaches, without any seismic shift.
Because they're a poorly run franchise. That's the answer right there. And to my knowledge, they wanted to keep Mike McCarthy, but they just couldn't. Mike McCarthy pretty much, I thought, was unhappy with the terms that were set. I could be wrong on that. That was what my impression was of the information that I heard. So I could be wrong with that. But in terms of comfortability, I understand what Greg is saying, but I also know that Greg is a little bit of a harder athlete based off of the conversations that he's had and just my interpretation of who he is from an athletic perspective, some of the things that he's said and how he kind of gets after things. Based on what I see Dak to be like, I think actually keeping Dak very comfortable is actually probably the way how you maximize Dak more than anything. I do not think that Dak would thrive with a coach that's going to be like really on him and really push him constantly and all that. I think that will cause Dak to actually shrink a little bit. I really do. And that doesn't mean that Dak's weak. That doesn't mean any of those types of things, because I think a lot of players can really benefit from balance. It's actually interesting that they were talking about this here, because I was literally just thinking about this before this clip, but for a completely different coach and kind of aspect of it all. And I've kind of spoke about this before. For me, like, I am the type of person that does not respond well to just hyper intense coaches or coaches that constantly want to make me feel uncomfortable. And it's not a matter of not being able to handle it or the pressure, because it's like, I want that pressure. Are you kidding me? Like, I want the ball. I want all the pressure on me because I want to be the hero, man. Like, I love that and live for that. It's like, bring it on. But coaches that constantly put you in this pressure cooker situation, and you don't feel like you can make mistakes in front of the coach. I played for coaches where it's like, you couldn't feel like you could make a mistake. And if you can't make a mistake, then you're afraid to take chances. And if you're afraid to take chances, then you can't grow. And if you're afraid to do all of that, then you can't go to the coach and be like, admit to them, I'm confused here, or I don't know what I need to do here. You need to be able to go to a coach and say, I'm a little confused, or I'm a little lost, or I'm not getting it. And if you don't have that relationship with a coach, then it's bad news. And a lot of times you can find yourself in a position with a coach where you're just constantly pretending to know what you're doing because you don't want to let anyone know that you're not getting it. And again, that's how you grow. That's how you learn. You evolve. So, having comfortability is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, again, to be fair, there's so many different types of personalities, especially on a football field. And some people, the only way you can kind of keep them in line is by making them uncomfortable. Because the moment they get comfortable, as Greg was saying, you get entitlement, which is very interesting because that is definitely more of a diva wide receiver personality, which we know Greg is going to obviously have a much more deeper understanding. I don't come from that perspective. To get the best out of me, I need to be the most comfortable. For me to be the most comfortable, I need to feel like I'm being supported. I need to feel like I can make the biggest mistake of my life, and that I will walk in on the bench and the coach will just have my back. He'll actually just be there to be like, hey man, it happens, rather than be like, what are you doing? Why did you just make that? That's not what we've been working on. And it's like, I know that. Obviously, if I could have done something differently, I would have, right? I know I made a mistake. I get it. You yelling at me in this moment actually is not what's going to get the best out of me. Because believe me, I am screaming in my head right now. And believe me, if I really made a mistake that now cost this team the end goal of what we want, it's going to haunt me forever. And I'm going to think about it nonstop. You yelling at me in this moment is not how we're going to get over this. It's not how we are going to now take it to the next quarter or whatever it is. So believe me, like, that's not where I grow. And I don't think that's where Dak grows. We've seen him in these moments. We've seen his eyes as wide as they possibly can be. And not all coaches and players connect in that, and so I that's why it's just like, I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing when we talk about continuity and comfortability, honestly. I do think that the Dallas Cowboys needed a change. I do think that Schottenheimer was probably not the right move, but if we're kind of, really kind of drilling in and looking at it from like a more comfortability and continuity thing, especially for Dak, I don't think that that's necessarily the issue. Now, do I think someone like a Micah Parsons needs a more serious, motivating coach that keeps everyone more in line? I do. Because that's that personality. Because, right, you let Micah be comfortable. It's just like, who knows what he will do. But at the same time, he obviously responded very well to Dan Quinn, and yet Dan Quinn was hardly that type of coach either. So it's interesting. There is no perfect coach personality. From my viewpoint, it's definitely a balance, because again, in terms of comfortability and support, I want a coach that will support me and have my back, but I also want him to call me out and tell me when I'm doing something wrong, or if he thinks that I could work harder, or that I'm not doing this or that, whatever it is. Like, I want them to tell me everything, so I can improve and grow. But again, it still needs to be done in a way that is just more supportive. It really does become more parental and less militant. I've never responded well to militant, even though there's plenty of I've had no shortage of coaches that were militant, and it's never got the best out of me. Never, never, never. And again, to be fair, I've definitely shared this before, one of the worst coaches that I've ever had in terms of that personality is the coach that made me the best player that I ever was, but not in the game. Not in the game in front of him, because again, you felt like you were in a pressure cooker. So in practices and whatnot, and in training camps, I absolutely became as good as I could possibly get. But everything else, in terms of how to now maximize me on the field, game time, not at all. He should have been my coach for just, on the side, private, like not my head coach. Then I would have been even better than I was. And anytime I ever got away from that coach and played on different teams, I was easily the best version of myself. But when I was in front of him on the field, easily far from the best version of myself. and it's just it just is the way how it goes sometimes. Which is why someone like Dak, I think responded so well to a Mike McCarthy, even if it ultimately didn't get them where they wanted to go. So yeah, I think if you were going to have a Schottenheimer rate, I do agree. Then you do just keep Mike McCarthy. But again, the reason why they essentially, eventually moved on from Mike, whether it was mutual or whatever, and then go to Schottenheimer, is because they're a poorly run franchise. That's the reality. They're a poorly run franchise. They could have made a play for Ben Johnson. They could have made a play for Harbaugh. They could have made a play for Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know. There's so many other things that they could have done that they just did not. I don't know if Kellen Moore would have been this massive upgrade in a way that like gets them over. Because again, you also have to ask yourself, do you think that the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott and the roster, adding a couple of pieces here and a couple pieces there through free agency and draft is enough to now turn you into a Super Bowl contender? I do not. I think if for Dak Prescott, your team will need to be absolutely stacked. You need to have an awesome team and you need to have awesome coaching. You need to have awesome coaching. You're going to need a top one, you're going to need to have like a top 1 or 2 defense. You're going to need to have an awesome offensive minded head coach or coordinator who's going to be able to like, again, go up against Fangio, go up against Dan Quinn, go up against the Rams. Like you're going to need to have like some big minds there. And I don't see that happening. And that's like, there's plenty of other teams that I can kind of point and be like, you know what, I think this would be a great idea to do this and that and this and that. But the way how the Cowboys are, the way how they're run, the way how they're constructed, I find it hard to believe, honestly. It's just like, I'm like, because that's really what we're asking this question now. It's like, what can the Dallas Cowboys do to ultimately, get to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl? And the reality is that the way they're constructed, the way they're run, and the coaching staff that they frequently have, it just never, to me, seems it's going to be good enough. You're not going to tell me that Dak Prescott and Schottenheimer are going to, lead the Cowboys to wins over the Rams, over the up-and-coming, pretty much already here, Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles. I just personally do not see it. I just don't. It was hard enough for Shanahan and the 49ers. It's hard enough for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, and again, a stacked roster with AJ and Saquon, et cetera, et cetera. It's always difficult. And most of the time, coach and quarterback are going to give you the edge, and I do not see that with Dallas right now. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Dallas Cowboys, the continuity, having Schottenheimer there tied directly to Dak? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.